Well, this gospel is known as the Bandit shepherd, which is quite interesting. I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. Wow, to have life abundantly sounds like what all of us really want, right? And the shepherd does the job specifically to protect the sheep so that they are safe from predators, from thieves. Protection is the reason we have doors. I think you close yours at night. I know I do. And I probably lock it. We have doors and we have gates. The interesting thing is, though the apostles lived in a time with all these barnyard descriptions and should have understood this, they didn't. So, for us, we are a little bit confused with this reading as well. So it needs some more understanding, unless you hang out down at Henny Penny Farm in Ridgefield and you're around sheep all the time. It probably doesn't make a sense. They didn't understand it, and we don't either. What does Jesus mean, anyway, when he says, I am the gate for the sheep? I'm the gate for the sheep. What we need to understand this metaphor is that every evening when the sheep would head back to the sheepfold with the shepherd, the most vulnerable place in that enclosure was the gap that they entered through. And it was even unusual then, but what Jesus is saying is that a good shepherd like Jesus didn't merely have a wooden gate at that vulnerable point. Jesus literally lay across the opening so that no predator had a chance to steal away anybody in the flock. Jesus tells this story in the Gospel of John because in his day there were plenty of false shepherds around, people who had no interest in the sheep except for their own profit. And so it is, especially, I think, in our day and age. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. Jesus would later on, when he went into Jerusalem, go to the temple and storm it and overturn the tables of the money changers there, who were all cheating the worshipers that had come to just pay the coin to be in the synagogue. So as I said, this gospel is known as the gospel of the bandit shepherd. Now, there are many bandit shepherds out there right now in Christianity. And I don't usually focus on things like this, but I decided to today. It's not just Christianity. Wherever there is religion, there are money and power-hungry charlatans looking for ways to pervert it for their own benefit. That's the reason, by the way, I don't know if you've talked to young people recently, but especially young adults who've never had an education in their faith don't want to have anything to do with religion. And they'll say, all the wars in the world have been caused by religion. We don't want to have anything to do with it. And they might be right. Evil shepherds exist in nearly all the major religions. They are terrorists in shepherd's clothing. My point today for you all is to call out the things you should be looking for so that you can tell the difference between the soft voice of your shepherd and the disguised howl of the wolf. My best way to show you this is to show you the difference is with a story of my first encounter with the damage caused by false shepherds. And it took a story I'm going to tell you, it took a lot of false shepherds to create what I saw. Back in the early 2000s, when I was a longtime member of Second Congregational Church in Greenwich, I was trained as and served as a Stephen minister. For you who don't know what Stephen ministers are, Stephen ministers receive about 2 years of training to take on the responsibility of a care receiver, someone who is in crisis, someone who's ill, someone who is dying. And the important thing is to be able to go in and develop a relationship of trust so that we can visit those caregivers and take some of the burden off the minister who is trying to make visits. So my care receiver, the first I was assigned, let's just call her Jenny. These are not real names. She was an 80-year-old daughter of a prominent family, none of which were in the picture for her in her old age. I first met Jenny one day when I stopped off at her beautiful apartment, which was in the best apartment house in Greenwich. She's small in stature. She opened the door and led me to the living room, limping all the way. She had a profound limp because she had been born with a club foot. I went into the living room, and the moment I walked in, I was struck by everything that I saw. It was unbelievable. On every single flat surface, there were religious statues, nativity scenes, and trinkets, multiple nativity scenes, everything from porcelain eagles to angels, and I mean angels everywhere, on the coffee table, all over the dining room table, and especially around the television across from the couch where she sat. Hundreds of them. When I asked Jenny where they'd come from, she said, with some difficulty, because she also had a speech impediment, she said that she watched TV preachers all day long, every day. And they asked for money, so she'd send them money. And as soon as she did, the fundraisers would make her feel like she belonged. And they would send her one of these trinkets or statues that were all over the house. And of course, then later on, they'd ask for more money. These TV preachers were, for the most part, preaching the prosperity gospel. Now, some prosperity gospel preachers are great, but other ones are kind of the Bible Bible shepherds that I talk about. To give you a short explanation about whom I'm talking about that created this situation, let me explain prosperity gospel in one sentence. God not only wants you to have what you need in this life, God wants you to become rich in material wealth and will help you cancel out all of your debts if only you will support this TV preacher with donations. And make sure that when you give that money to TV preachers, you know it's going to be returned to you in many ways. Now, I'm calling out one preacher this morning, Kenneth Copeland, who preaches the prosperity gospel. Copeland claims there is something wrong with you if a Christian doesn't become rich. Kenneth Copeland is a prosperity gospel TV preacher. He told his viewers on air that he's a billionaire. He said, "I am a billionaire because the assignment of the Lord that he gave me, he said, I want you to begin to confess the billion flow." So I guess we all know where that $1 billion came from. Sadly, the people who are attracted the most to these pitches are often, sadly, the poor and people of color who don't have the advantages of people who are not of color. The thing is, and this is the gospel according to me, God is not a pinball, God is not a gumball machine. You don't just stick the right change in and out pops a bazooka gum. You have to work for it. So, one of the things that bothers me about some of the other TV shepherds that ask for funds is they never check back with these repeat givers to see if they're not hurting the ones who think that the voice they hear asking for money is Jesus. In Jenny's case, this was not about her getting more money that she needed, and that's the strange part of this story. You see, her parents back in the 1920s set her up with a trust fund, which, by the way, I think Jenny may have told some of the fundraisers about, which is why she found herself in this position. What Jenny wanted was for someone, anyone, to make her feel like she was part of a family, to be a wanted member of someone's family. You see, when Jenny was born with a club foot and a speech impediment, the reality of the imperfection of their child was more than her social register parents could cope with back in the 20s. They hid Jenny from their friends, even their church friends. That's how I got some of these stories. No one actually knew that Jenny existed for years. And here's the unbelievable point. Imagine you doing this to one of your children. When they would invite people over to their mansion for a party, they dressed Jenny up like a maid and had her serve the guests. Serve the guests. She grew up isolated from normal people, and with limited mobility in the days that I knew her, she couldn't get out much. She only had the voices of the TV preachers to follow, and those were really false TV shepherds. And as a result, she trusted no one, but she was surrounded by the trinkets of her generosity. I went back to my Stephen minister supervisor, and together we informed the clueless law-appointed trust guardian that Jenny was depleting her trust fund that way, and they were able to limit what she did giving out her money. Thieves and robbers. The word thief, by the way, in Greek is kleptos, which is the same root for our word kleptomania. Robber, or lestis in Greek, translates to terrorists. As I said earlier, the bandit shepherds co-opt religion to their own purpose, regardless of the denomination that they park themselves in. ISIS has distorted Islam into a monstrosity. The ultra-Zionists, who target women and children in the West Bank, corrupt Judaism into hatred, just as the Ku Klux Klan at one point appropriated Christianity. Now, Nancy Rockwell is a religion writer who called our attention to the term bandit shepherd. She blogs on Pathos. And she said, she even takes it an additional step. She says there are small hate churches that revile gay and lesbian people in public, burn Qurans on their church lawns, and seek the death penalty, even though they say they believe in Jesus, who was executed as a criminal and forgave the other criminals on the cross. Jesus warns his friends in John to beware false shepherds. The false shepherd steals everything. The church, the mosque, the community inside and outside, and the faith itself. Nancy also names another battlefield of hate between the truthful press and the untruthful press. God knows we get enough of this these days. About this, and of the slanted press, she says, these public figures are not clergy, but they are shepherds, leading souls to want to be cruel rather than merciful, punishing rather than welcoming, and bigoted rather than open to others, foregoing judgment as Jesus bade us. But then, again, you know the voice of your shepherd. He makes you feel, when you hear bias and bigotry, he makes you feel somehow uneasy when you hear that in the speech of friends. He opens the gate for you. He says, "All who come before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep shall not listen to them." So I ask you, as Jesus asked you, to be alert for the time when you detect among your friends the subtle sound of the wolf, when they might reveal their bigotry toward others. I ask you to be brave enough to speak up and speak to their hatred, quiet their hatred with words that point them toward understanding instead. Remember, as I said before, following Jesus is not for wimps. That's why you continue to follow the voice of your good shepherd. That's the way you become more like him every single day. Amen.